Live on YouTube, and we are preparing to live stream the meeting. Live on YouTube. Preparing to live stream the meeting.
926.
Oops. I don't want an ad.
Oh, here it is.
All right.
So let's see. Share it
Oops.
to Facebook.
I don't want an ad.
There we go. Oh, here
And
it is.
it is 11 a.m. All right. We are getting all our shares in place.
Share it. Facebook.
And
Yeah, I just got to get it there so I can mute the sound.
right.
There we go. Oh, here it is.
It is 11 a.m. All right. We are getting all our shares in place. You got it muted?
There we go.
Got to get it there so I can mute the sound.
Right. It is 11 a.m. We are getting all our shares in place. You got it muted?
I do, I think.
There we go.
That was actually the recording. It wasn't me.
Right.
So somebody's not got it muted. And once that's been done, we'll be ready to start.
I wonder if
I
that's.
I think.
That was actually the recording. It wasn't me. It sounds like you're not muted yet, Rod.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, it's on YouTube. I got to mute it. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have it muted on YouTube. Yeah.
And once that's been done, we'll be ready to start.
I wonder if that's.
Could it be me that's not muted? That was actually the recording. No, I'm muted. Sounds like you're not muted yet, Rod.
Well, I have it
Yeah,
muted
I'm
here. I have it muted here, and I have it.
YouTube. I got to mute it. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have it muted on YouTube.
I have it muted on both. I don't know. Maybe I just not do this.
Maybe it was me. I just turned off my YouTube. So
There you go. Yeah, I think that's good.
Let's do it. Good morning, folks. It's Dean, and I call myself the interim administrator and music director and fake minister of Community Church. Welcome to Community Church of Boston's Zoom broadcast. We're so glad you're with us. There's already 15 of you, and as usual, we're kind of slow stragglers. Just like when we meet live, it seems like we don't have critical mass until about 20 minutes into the the service, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I'm just glad you're all here, and I see some wonderful friends that I am very glad to see who aren't our usual attendees, like Isabel. Hi, Isabel. It's so good to see you. Isabel is my friend from Brattleboro, Vermont, and we have a story to tell, Isabel and I. And we have Karen Klein, who will be joining us with beautiful interpretive poetry in a couple of weeks. And we have a whole bunch of phone numbers from Maine and from Western Massachusetts and all kinds of folks. And it is just the favorite thing of mine to be able to bring, especially in this day and age of Zoom, from all over the place, wonderful, legendary players and songwriters, and today is absolutely no exception. It's just an incredible honor and pleasure for me to introduce and welcome to you. He's never been on our community church stage before, but I have hosted him here in Boston before. His name is MacDonald, and he's just a really legendary songwriter from the 80s Greenwich Village scene. Since has moved to Florida, but it continues an incredibly busy touring schedule during both normal times and now. He was just telling me his multitude of Zoom engagements. Rod, it's just great to have you here, and take it away. The stage, our humble stage, is yours.
Thanks, Dean. Hi, everybody. Yes, I've been doing the Zoom tour around Florida over the past few months. Although I do get out once in a while. There's a man 6 feet away. He's pointing and laughing at me. He says I've fallen for a hoax, a conspiracy. To wear a mask, he says, infringes on his rights. It's all about freedom, he says to me, there in the checkout line. You may be right, I say, I don't have all the answers. And if you are, I'll look foolish and have wasted my time. But if you're wrong, a lot of people might die tomorrow. Freedom goes both ways, my friend, I'm exercising mine. There's a whole political party that says there's no global warming. They got their own TV network to tell them it's all a joke. And this guy calls me a tree hugger for the electric car I'm driving. He climbs down from his monster truck in a big blue cloud of smoke. Well, you may be right, I say, I don't know the future. And if you are, I'll miss my chance to make that engine whine. And if you're wrong, people will lose their homes and families. Well, freedom goes both ways, my friend, I'm exercising mine. Jesse James rode the trails across the wide Missouri. He never put a mask on except to go into a bank. He always took it off when someone took him in and bought him dinner. And he never put it on again till somebody said thanks. When the Bubba Beer got on the corner with his AK-47, says taking my guns away ain't gonna save those kids in school. It's my right to show up anywhere, carrying anything I want to. If you're not carrying nowadays, well, maybe you're a fool. You may be right, I say, but I will still be working to walk the streets without you threatening me or my kind. And if you're wrong, we could save some kids from dying. Freedom goes both ways, my friend, I'm exercising mine. Freedom goes both ways, my friend, I'm exercising mine. Both ways, my friend, I'm exercising mine. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I could see you all clapping.
Can you see this flame? We're going to light a candle to start out. A candle for hope, a candle for unity of purpose, a candle for warmth, a candle for friendship. I've got this thing that I love to read at the beginning. It's from one of the founders of Community Church. 1920, the church was founded, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But Clarence Skinner wrote these words, kind of talking about the reason we come together here. Out of the world's wide ways, we come to this, our house of fellowship and aspiration. Here may the evils which beset us be banished by the power of justice, the fears that haunt us be overcome by fresh insight, the doubts that drive us be dissolved into finer faith. Here, each in our own way, yet together, let us for a brief time look into the mysteries of life's beginning, the source out of which the endless eons roll and countless lives emerge. And with renewed hope, search through this maddening maze of things to find again life's aims and meaning, and above all, its glory. We have at Community Church a beautiful record of archival material. It's been in storage for quite some time, but we own a 5-story building here, and one of the floors, the 5th floor, was vacated by a tenant, and we took that advantage in our 100th anniversary to lay out these archives, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. We have this incredible history. We were the biggest church in Boston for some time, met in Symphony Hall. 2,000 people might come to hear the likes of W.E.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, Robert Frost, Henry Wallace. The list of names is phenomenal. I'll show you a little thing that we had made up. It says, "What do we have in common?" And it has Angela Davis, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Noam Chomsky, W.B. Du Bois, and who's that? And Howard Zinn. And what we have in common is that we have spoken for social justice and civil rights at Community Church of Boston. Not to toot our own horn or anything, but we have some pretty fabulous guests join us even to this day, like Rod MacDonald, like Regina Robinson. Anyway, I want to go through a couple other things. This is a book that's not getting much activity these days. This is our membership book, and it has names of people who have signed the book to be members of Community Church. It goes back all the way till 1966, 1967 are some names, all the way up to more recent members. In the time of the plague, we haven't been making much of a plug. We sometimes have membership Sundays, and we put the book out, and people come up and sign it in public, kind of like my evangelical past, where you would come up and accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. It's not quite like that, but it's something like it. It's just saying you want to be part of this phenomenal experiment. The last signatures that we have are from early 2020, I'm sorry, before the pandemic struck, and we haven't done anything about this. But this is just a way to say that if you're interested in joining, you can do it personally. We're a lonely place right now. You look at our auditorium. It's very quiet, but if you wanted to come down and sign this book, I would personally give you a tour of this building and show you all the way from down in the basement, all the way to the archives on the 5th floor. And you could also, we haven't figured out a mechanism to do it, but you could join virtually as well. And basically you're saying, this is something I want to be part of. There's no requirement for to make a contribution. There's no requirement to do anything presently. And so if you're interested in joining, be in touch with us. The email address is comm@gmail.com. Com is COMM. Charlie, actually in the chat, it's wrong. It's commchurch@gmail.com. Just COMM, church@gmail.com. So that's the little membership plug. I want to go on to a couple more things. The first is that we had a finance committee meeting yesterday in preparation for this afternoon's fiscal meeting. At 1 o'clock we will meet and we will approve a budget, hopefully. I mean, sometimes there's objections, but we were talking about our articles of incorporation and what we were constituted as. And I was able to dig up in our files this original document from 1921 that says it has the original signers and the founders. There's 6 of them. 3 of them are women, I'm proud to say. You couldn't say that about the speakers at Community Church, but plenty of women, not enough, really. And it has their addresses right here. And what we found out was that they didn't incorporate themselves. The first meeting of the church was January 11th, 1920, but they didn't incorporate themselves until March 1922, and this was the form that they filled out. And then they got a plaque that looks like this, which I found in the archives untouched in a folder, and I had it framed, and the date on this is April 1922. And what does that mean? That means that our 100th anniversary is not 1920. Actually, it is, and we were going to celebrate it in 2020, but that damn pandemic hit, and we had 5 beautiful concerts lined up to celebrate, and we had several high-profile speakers that we were going to have in a bigger auditorium than this, but the COVID rained on our parade. But these documents prove that we're still 100 in 1921 and in 1922. So let's party. We're gonna keep on doing it after the coast is clear, and there's no end to our celebration. So I wanted to tell you about that, and I wanted to have one more quick reading. Oh, one thing I want to show you. There's a sandwich board out on Boylston Street in front of our building in Copley Square, where probably about 20,000 people a day walk by. And here's the newest addition to our sandwich board. This is from our gem of a graphic designer and office manager, Crystal Rollins Jackson. And it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it's got them all there. If you'd like a copy of this, I'd be glad to send you a PDF or even stick one in the mail to you. Just request it. It's a list of all the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We also have my favorite. This is my own little personal thing. Eduardo Galeano is from Uruguay, and he is the author that I've spent the most time on. I love his writing, and a lot of what he does is write in little vignettes. And this is called the Children of the Days, and it's vignettes, one for each day of the year. And I haven't even read this, so I'm going to look up February 21 and just read it. Even if it's appropriate or inappropriate, whatever it is, here it is. It's called The World Shrinks, February 21. Today is International Mother Language Day. Every 2 weeks, a language dies. The world is diminished when it loses its human sayings, just as when it loses its diversity of plants and beasts. In 1974, Angela Loich died. She was one of the last Ona Indians from Tierra del Fuego, way out there at the edge of the world. She was the last one who spoke their language. Angela sang to herself for no one else in that language no longer recalled by anyone but her. I'm walking in the steps of those who have gone. Lost am I. In times gone by, the Onas worshipped several gods. Their supreme god was named Pemaulk. Pemaulk meant word. Thank you, Eduardo Galeano from Uruguay. I want to announce a couple more things coming up that I think you will be interested in. The first is about a memorial service that will be held for Robert Datilio. Bob was not a member of the church, but we had a 50-year relationship with Bob Datilio. Why? Because he was probably the world's preeminent scholar on Sacco and Vanzetti. Sacco and Vanzetti are our church's martyr patron saints. They were charged in 1920, right around when we were founded. And one of our first struggles and efforts were the defense of Sacco and Vanzetti. Several of the first members of the church worked hard on the defense of Sacco and Vanzetti, especially Mrs. Gertrude Winslow, who happened to be in Italy. She visiting Vanzetti's family when Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in 1927. She came to know Vanzetti very well and visited him in prison while their trial and then their execution was in process. Sacco and Vanzetti, Bob Datilio researched that case like no one you can ever imagine. His memorial service will be right from this room via Zoom on Sunday, March 7th in the afternoon. We will be joined by Charlie King, who wrote that incredible song called Two Good Arms about Sacco and Vanzetti, and a lot of other musical selections. Bob Datilio was very much into classical music and jazz and opera. And he was also very interested in this author. I'm sorry, this photographer. Her name was Tina Modotti. There was nobody who studied her more than he did. His house is filled with books and photographs and prints of Tina Modotti, who was lived in the 30s, Italian photographer, moved to the United States, married the photographer Edward Weston, and they went to Mexico, and she stayed there. He came back to the States, and she lived out her life there, a very short career. She hung out with Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, and Bob Datilio studied her and Sacco and Vanzetti. Anyway, his memorial is on March 7th. There will be an email about that. I want to tell you about one more event that's happening. It's in our newsletter. I'd be glad to send you a newsletter if you're not on our list. Add your email address to the chat in the Zoom, and we will send you an email newsletter. Or if you like the paper version better, give us your address and we will send you the paper version of the newsletter that just came out. And it has a whole bunch of great stuff, including a showing of, on Tuesday, March 16th, commemorating the anniversary of the death of Rachel Corrie, who was killed in Gaza by a Caterpillar tractor trying to stop the demolition of a home in Gaza. On that day, we will air the DVD of the documentary "Gaza Fights for Freedom." Abby Martin is the journalist and documentarian, and she will join us on that evening to comment on the making of that film. Okay, let's bring back Rod MacDonald for a couple of songs. Rod, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dean. When I was thinking about what I was going to sing today, we were talking a little bit about the role of education during this pandemic. I think you're going to talk about that in a bit, Regina, and I don't want to get in your way, but it made me think of this next song, which is not that new. It's a few years old, but it seems to me that one of the things that often leads people or helps people to ultimately triumph is adversity. I mean, big things just don't come, on a silver platter. You have to work for them. You have to believe in them. And so this is a song that kind of reflects some of those things. People that we know and love who really fought for what they believed in and probably wouldn't have been so significant if they hadn't been put in the position where they had to do that. It's called "That's Why You Play the Game." Let's do it this way. Did you hear about the guitarist? Broke his arm in an automobile. They told him he'd never work again. He refused to take that deal. He had the doctors fix his elbow to hold a guitar where his fingers curled. At 94, he was one of the best guitarists in the world. And that's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you showed you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. Well, there was a girl who wanted to go to a school that wouldn't let her in. They told her to just get married, let men do the important things. But she'd earned her grades and she sued that school, and to that school she went. And now that university has a woman president. And that's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you showed you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. Now there was a champion boxer who refused to go to war. He said, I've got nothing against anybody, I don't know what they're fighting for. He stood up for his convictions, and they declared him a free man. And that title that they took away, he won it back again. And that's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you showed you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. Now when I was a younger man, they said I was wasting my time, trying to sing my songs for you, living my life in rhyme. Well, it's true I don't ride in limos, own a mansion in Malibu. Ah, but ladies and gentlemen, I'm here singing this song for you. That's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you show you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. And hey, how about that scientist was completely paralyzed, had to speak to people through a voice encoder that read the movements of his eyes. Could have wasted away in a wheelchair, but he had too much on his mind. Won a Nobel Prize for the books he wrote, one blink at a time. That's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you show you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. Cause there's always someone to tell you you can't live out your dream. They'll say you'll never be good enough, never make it in that scene. Well, you can stand there doing nothing, you'll be finished before you start. Ah, but who are you gonna believe anyway? Someone else or your own heart? 'Cause that's why you play the game, 'cause you never ever know what you can do till you do your best, till you put yourself to the test. Then win or lose, you showed you stood tall just the same. My little darling, that's why you play the game. My little darling, that's why you play the game. Well, when this pandemic started, I was just about to go to Europe for a tour. It got canceled, of course, and everything else. But a funny thing happened to me one night. I was hanging around the house, and I'd been reading how people were starting to play live on the internet. And I picked up my guitar one night, and I sat down in front of Facebook and sang into my phone for about 10 minutes. And it was about 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. I just decided to see if it actually worked. And in the space of about 3 minutes, I had 60 people watching. And after about a half an hour, there were 600 people watching me do this set. I'd had a couple glasses of wine and had no intention of doing anything. I was just checking the sound. And so I started playing every Sunday night on Facebook, and I've had kind of a regular group of people signing on each week. And it's become kind of a regular meeting, somewhat like this, a community in exile, you might say, in my case anyway. Well, that got me thinking, you know, when this is all over, and hopefully it will be one of these days, where would we like to end up? You know, where would that want to be? Where would we want that to be? And I think that that we have pushed the natural world and the natural order of things pretty hard as a species, we humans, and that there needs to be a reckoning somehow, a rightening of the balance. So it got me thinking that one of the ways that we might help that would be if we could just collectively put our minds to it with prayer, with humility, with love. And well, anyway, I wrote this song in about April. And if you had asked me in April, would I still be singing on Zoom in February of the following year, I probably would have said, oh my gosh, I hope not. But here we all are, and it's a good thing we have it, because otherwise we'd be sitting in our houses just stuck without any means of communicating. But you didn't bring me here to talk. Let me sing this song for you. Hey, is anybody listening? Are you all alone, wherever it is you are? You know, I'm just sitting here thinking, or maybe I'm just wishing on a star. And if there's somebody out there who can recognize a single word I say, I'd like to ask a simple blessing for all of us while we're on the way. Heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world, heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world. You know, we don't need another mountain. We don't need someone to lead us to the light. We just need to learn to live together, and I believe the rest will turn out all right. Heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world, heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world. Simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world, heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world. Hey, you can sing the chorus with me wherever you are. And here's the good part, nobody else has to hear you. You know that Mother Nature loves all creation, not only me and you. She will rise up if you harm her loved ones. And yes, we're beginning to see that it's true. Got to heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world, heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere. Heal the world. So hey, is anybody listening? sing it everywhere, heal the world. Heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere, heal the world. Come on, heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere, heal the world. Heal the world, heal the world. It's a simple prayer, sing it everywhere, heal the world.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
very
you,
much.
Rod MacDonald. You warm our heart and you inspire our soul. Rod MacDonald, road warrior for love for so many years. It's just so great to have you with us. I want to make one last pitch before I bring up Regina about our music next week. Her name is Sharon Katz, and she's about my age, mid-60s, and she's from South Africa. And she is a masterful guitar player, and she, with a group that was called the Peace Train, toured around South Africa in 1993 and 94 with Nelson Mandela. It's an interracial musical group, and she has a story to tell. And she has done just wonderful projects with her band. It's just a really happening Peace Train band. It just sounds so good. And she will be joining us by herself from San Diego. She works in San Diego. Recently, her projects were about inter-border singing, music from kids from both sides of that horrible curtain wall that separates us from Mexico. And again, the topic of the day next Sunday is the W.E.B. Du Bois Address, which we do every year. Du Bois spoke many times at Community Church, and the speaker is Margaret Kimberly from Black Agenda Report. She's a historian, wrote a book that was called Prejudential, and it's a review of racial prejudice on the part of every president that has ever been in office. Regina Robinson, we're so glad to have you this morning, a new friend. And I want to especially thank Ed Pazanese for bringing Regina to our attention and to our humble pulpit stage, whatever you want to call it, Zoom. Regina Robinson is the Dean of Student Affairs at Cambridge College, where she delivers a comprehensive program of educational and support services to a thriving population of adult learners. As an experienced leader of student effectiveness and support for 2 decades, she was appointed to the Boston School Committee from 2014 to 2018 and continues to coach families and advocate for marginalized populations as a speaker in various roles in education. She is married to Jua. Did I say it right?
You said it.
And they are parents to 4 stars from elementary to high school, one with Down syndrome who became her game changer in disability work, community advocacy, statewide and board leadership. Having served both local and national organizations, Regina currently serves on the boards of Scholar Athletes and Special Olympics of Massachusetts and is pursuing her EdD in higher education leadership at Regis College. Regina, what a wonderful bio, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dean. I appreciate it, and thank you for this warm welcome. I must also give a shout out as well, Dean, to Ed, because Ed has been so encouraging and persistent. Even after my time on the school committee ended, Ed continued to reach out. So thank you, Ed, for valuing the work that that I was able to do while serving Boston Public School students. As a person of faith, I'm so thankful to when I'm invited to any church, any organization. So if you would, just join me in an opening prayer. Oh God, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for this time that I'm able to share with my friends here. And I ask that you would just use my words, you would speak through me, that you would use me as only you can. Bless this day in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about this pandemic and how it has impacted many, many people. Specifically, the lane that I run in is the lane of education. It's the lane of education for all students, but it's also the lane of education for a specific type of student, our marginalized students. And so as I look back on March 2020, March 13th to be exact, my 14-year-old daughter, Jordan, likes to remind us because it was her birthday. And birthdays for a teenager is a time when you can go to school and your friends can celebrate you, right? It's one of those few days where you get to have a little bit of extra attention. And for her, that day didn't come because that was the day that students were not able to return to school due to the pandemic. So as she likes to tell me, Mom, the pandemic happened on my birthday, even though we knew it was happening a few months leading up to it. It impacted everyone on her birthday. And for her, middle school, moving into high school changed forever. As I look on this screen today, I also wonder how this pandemic has changed you, has impacted your everyday life, has impacted your celebrations, has impacted your sad days and your successful days. The pandemic has impacted us all. But today I want to talk about how this marginalized populations of students with disabilities, families impacted by disabilities, have been impacted greatly. When I served on the Boston School Committee, I love to tell the story, that I love to tell the genesis and how this began. Because in Boston, the school committee is appointed by the mayor, and many people assume, and naturally so, that those connections to the mayor have taken place over years, and there's a sense of political acumen that's involved, and there's a sense of savviness and security and success that has preceded such appointments. In my case, I was just a mom in Boston, an African-American mom who's a transplant from Virginia, and moved to Boston with our little girl, baby girl, Jordan, with the hopes of beginning a new adventure as church planners and serving our community. We knew that Boston serves a large amount of young adults, and we wanted to connect young adults to their communities, because many times young adults are in college settings and they're focused on their degree, they're pursuing their passions. They're ready to take trips around the world so that they can learn how they're going to impact the world and change the world. And I knew from my background in education and higher education and working with young adults, I knew that young adults are also gifted and talented, and they're passionate about changing the world out there, but many times they may not focus on the world right in their backyard, in their neighborhood, in their community. So my husband and I had a passion, and we were on a mission to connect with young adults within a church setting to impact their community. And we were fortunate to lead that work for over a decade. But soon after moving to Boston, away from our families, he's from Cleveland, Ohio, I'm from Virginia. Soon after beginning this adventure together, we found out that we're going to have our second child. Hooray! You pull out your book, What to Expect When You're Expecting Again, and you pull out all of those books that you were able to use the first time around. No big deal. It's just adding on to the current adventure. But February 13th, 2007, the day before Valentine's Day, will always be a marker for me, because it is the day that I wasn't getting ready to celebrate Valentine's Day and sending my cards out to my loved ones and friends, getting ready for a date night. No, it was a routine ultrasound appointment. It was that appointment that I'd done before with our daughter, Jordan. It was that appointment where you find out, are you having a boy? Are you having a girl? Again, nothing new, just another typical day. Except February 13th, 2007 was not a typical day. It would be a day that would change my life forever. Because at that appointment, we found out throughout the procedure, when the technician said, "Oh," as he looked on the screen, and he said, "Oh no, I've got bad news. You see this picture here?" As though I could actually understand what's on the screen. He said, "You see this? This is your baby's brain. This is the fluid. It's too much fluid in your baby's brain, and it's too early in gestation. Oh, this is bad news. I suggest you terminate your pregnancy." And with that, he walked out and said, "I need to get another opinion." And I laid there, no one ever telling me. I've never read anywhere that a routine ultrasound appointment could go south so quickly. He brought in another radiologist. She began the procedure, and she and him entered into a conversation as though I wasn't laying there, as they began talking about my baby. "Oh yes, too much fluid. This is called hydrocephalus. Hydro, water, cephalus, brain. Too much water on the brain. And yes, our recommendation is termination. This is not good." And they completed the procedure and they left. And my husband and I looked at each other. We brought our baby girl, Jordan, because we wanted her to know if she was going to have a brother or a sister. And as they almost left the room, my husband said, "Wait a minute. We hear what you told us, but what you didn't tell us is, are we having a boy or a girl?" And with a slight turn of their head, he said, "Oh, it's a boy," as he walked out. That moment is cemented in my mind 13 years later because it was a life-changing moment. You remember a moment that changed your life, maybe a moment of bad news as well. Maybe a moment of tragedy. Suddenly, your life is changed. See, I came to Boston to change the world, to help young adults change the world. I came to Boston to impact people around me. But what I didn't realize was there was another path set before me. And that path set before me was to not just impact young adults who were in medical school, but guess what, you all? The path set before me was also to impact those young adults' professors, because we would now engage them as physicians, as surgeons. I thought I was coming to Boston to become just a regular mom with all of those regular duties, taking your kids to school, carpooling them to games, serving at the school. But the path set before me was not just to impact my daughter, who's neurotypical, but to now impact her brother, who is not neurotypical, who later we received the diagnosis of trisomy 21, Down syndrome. And as one doctor said in that meeting, "Oh, 2 diagnoses. hydrocephalus, and Down syndrome, he's gonna have a poor quality of life, and you don't want that burden on your hands. You should terminate the pregnancy. What a moment. He's going to have a poor quality of life, and you don't want that burden on your hands. I wish Josiah were here today. He is on his way to our daughter Joy's basketball game with the rest of the family, which is why my home is quiet. Thank you. And if Josiah were here, he would probably want to come on screen. He'd probably want to tell you hello. He'd probably want to thank you all for listening to his mom. And then he'd probably want to tell you how much he loves Tom Brady and LeBron James. And then I'd need to scoot him on. But what I've learned from our boy, a boy who I fell in love with before I met him, a boy who I said yes to when doctors told me to say no. What I learned from our boy is this wonderful world of inclusion. It's a dark space at times, because I learned early on that not everyone's ready to actually do what I call, and I tell my students at Cambridge College, to have the ICU moments. I believe inclusion first has to begin with seeing that other person, and then actually hearing what they have to say. Having the ICU moment for me and entering into the world of disability allowed me to recognize and open my eyes to the 57,000 students in Boston Public Schools, 11,000 who are on IEPs, meaning 11,000 students need some type of additional support in the classroom. That's how I met Ed, advocating for kids. My journey was just a mom in Boston. That's how it began. But you all, as I started to recognize the needs that Josiah would have, I started to realize, wait a minute, I have an education, I have higher education experience. I have many different friends that I've been meeting. And I am still trying to navigate this new normal. It is painfully hard. When we were getting prepared for school around the age of 3, having transition meetings, having had early intervention for him, and I started to meet families, one after the other, whose kids had different diagnoses, chronic health conditions, different needs that required additional support. And I started to realize there were parents who could raise their hand and speak up like me. There were parents who would ask questions and show up and stand up and speak up on behalf of their children. But I also started to meet families who didn't want to acknowledge the challenges of their child. And I remembered meeting a mom, and I saw that her son had Down syndrome, has Down syndrome just like my son, because Down syndrome presents certain distinct features. And I was ready to enter into a friendship. Yes, another mom like me. We can charge this hill together. But I started to begin in my conversation with her that there was a sense of hesitancy. And she would say things like, you know, we don't really discuss his challenges. He's going to be fine. And my heart broke. I remembered going to sleep that night and I was restless. I couldn't sleep. I woke up the next morning, and as I reflected on that interaction with the mom, I felt my heart break. I felt my heart feeling burdened, because I thought to myself, if you can't articulate the challenges, how can you advocate for the needs? If you can't articulate what's wrong, what's not working, how will you be able to advocate for change, for the things that are needed? And my heart hurt for her. And I connected with some of the leaders in early intervention, and I asked them, after sharing that experience, I asked, what can we do to help parents advocate after articulating the challenges? And they looked at me and said, what if you're the answer, Regina? I look to you all today and I wonder, what if the answer is in the room for the societal ills that we face today, for the challenges that have been before us, that we have seen even amplified in this last year in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic? The answer is in the room. When those leaders looked at me and said, Regina, what if you can help us mobilize parents and families? What if you can help us better inform families? And through my tears in that meeting, I said, I don't know how. I'm still trying to navigate this new normal with my child. And they said, you can navigate while you are also helping others. And I said, sign me up. I'm willing to go for it and try. And for the next several years, I would help mobilize families. I would help increase resource sharing. I would meet a parent and I would ask them where they lived, where they're from, and what they need. And I would point them in the right direction. Did you know that Stone Boston Early Intervention can provide X, Y, and Z? Oh, you're in need of play groups so that your child can interact with other families. Are you aware of this organization? At the time, there was an organization called Thrive in Five, and I got plugged in their parent groups, and then the Boston Teachers Union began, having some parent engagement meetings, and I would get plugged in. I was one of those moms that just wanted to learn, and I wanted to connect with other people who wanted to learn. And one day, I can remember it was a Sunday afternoon. My husband had been out of town for work, and as is the case when I'm all hands on deck with kids, it can wear a woman down. And so I was taking a nap one Sunday afternoon, and my phone began to ring. I thought I turned it off so I could rest. And I looked over at the phone, and there was an unknown number. And I picked it up and just said, hi, this is Regina. And the voice on the other end said, Regina, Marty Walsh, how are you today? Do you have a few moments? I can speak with you. And I had this split-second moment. Have you ever had that moment where this can go in two different directions? This is either a prank call, because I don't know Marty Walsh personally, or this could be Mayor Marty Walsh. And I had that split-second moment. I have pranksters in my family, brother-in-laws, I have fun people. And I decided to just respond and say, nice to talk with you. Yes, I have some time. And he began to share the vision for Boston Public Schools. And he communicated his vision for supporting families with disabilities and students with disabilities. And he wanted me to serve on the superintendent's search to find a new superintendent. And I said yes. And then he asked if I had questions. And I said, well, how did you get my phone number? I still haven't gotten the answer to that. But I learned in that moment that my dark season of trying to navigate this new normal in this new world of disability was now able to help shine a light on the needs of students with disabilities. I served on the superintendent search committee, and through that time, I saw that there was an opening for the school committee. And after discussing with different friends, I realized that it could be an opportunity to amplify the voices of students with disabilities. And I signed up. And as I interviewed, I shared the experiences of my family, but I also shared experiences of other families. So my friends today, as I just shared, my story, the genesis of how I was able to get plugged into a greater platform of advocacy, I would like for you to know that your story matters, not just the successes in your life, but your challenges, those dark seasons. Your story matters. Someone needs to know your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Challenges with disability have been highlighted and amplified this last year. Schools have closed. Do you know what that means for students with disabilities? When schools close, a student who is on an IEP has a team around him or her. A student with disabilities has, for example, a physical therapist who was helping that student with their gross motor skills, an occupational therapist who was helping that student navigate many times for our son, early years, how to hold a pen correctly, how to write, how to button, how to navigate those fine motor skills. A student with disabilities may have a paraprofessional, an adult who needs to come alongside that student to help with the resources that are necessary to help support the student in the classroom. A student with disabilities has a special education teacher who can work alongside the general education teacher. When you think about all of those complexities for a student with disabilities, and then it's gone because schools have closed or it's moved virtually, and everyone is scrambling to figure out how to navigate this new normal in the midst of a pandemic. My friends, I have to tell you, it's been exhausting. It's been painful. As I hear the stories of my friends, although I'm not serving in a leadership capacity in Boston, and I'm not living in Boston any longer, those relationships have continued. As I have connected with communities and friends around the state, I hear the stories, the struggles of now having to homeschool, now having to navigate virtual learning. For our son, it's very challenging on the days that he is home because he has to focus on camera, but then he also has to navigate his papers and the work that he's doing. So my role as a mom is shifted to being a teacher slash paraprofessional slash special education specialist slash physical therapist, occupational therapist. It's a lot. My heart goes out to families impacted like mine. But I believe the answer is in the room. How can we move forward together? I loved the music. Thank you, Rod. I loved the message about hope and kindness and peace and working together. I know that I could not have navigated the last 13 years on my own, no matter how much research I love to pursue, how much relationship and opportunities I love to navigate. There's no way. We need each other. And I've learned that the power of inclusion in education, it means saying, I see you. It means saying, I hear you. I'm hearing the needs that you have. It means saying, I'm learning to understand how to better support you. But it also means saying, I need to include you in the decision-making, because I learned that there are people in power and people in positions who often may not care to listen to those who are not in those powerful positions. My daughter, Jordan, who is 14 now, when we moved out of Boston, she moved into a new school and she came to me the first week and said, Mom, being a new girl is exhausting. Being the new kid is exhausting in a new space, because many times you don't know what you don't know. And as she said, you're waiting for people to help you out. You're waiting for people to help you navigate, and it's exhausting. And my heart broke for her. And I said, Jordan, how can we navigate this new school together? How can I help you learn how to build friendships? And she said, well, everyone doesn't say hi to a new person like you would, Mom. And I began to teach her what I called the 5 F's of getting to know people. Asking someone, where are you from? asking someone, tell me your favorite activity, asking someone, tell me about your family. Tell me about your favorite foods to eat. See, Jordan wants to become a chef one day. I said, Jordan, you can have a conversation about food and start to engage another person. And then the last F, asking someone about their future. What do you hope to do when you grow up? So she started navigating those 5 Fs as she would engage friends. She came to me a week later and said, Mom, guess what? I went to a school meeting about student council. I think a way to make friends is if I run for student council president. Really? Let's do it, Jordan. I said, go big or go home. Let's go. That's my girl. So we started to work together on her campaign. Jordan, what message do you want to communicate? What's your mission? What do you want to do within middle school? And I'd like to share a portion of her campaign speech, because as I said, the answer is in the room. Jordan shared with the students that middle schoolers can make a difference in 4 ways. 4 ways: by being curious, by being compassionate, by being confident, and by being courageous. This is my girl, wanting to impact her peers. She said, Mom, what I've learned about middle school is that many times people will treat you as a middle schooler as though you're waiting to grow up and go to high school. And you need to learn lessons when you go to high school. She said, but middle schoolers can make a difference where they are. My friends, can I tell you today that in the season of life that you're in, you can make a difference where you are. You can reflect on your past. You can look at your present, and you can plan for the future. But where you are today is what you are able to make a difference, what you are able to do in making a difference. To watch my middle school daughter at the time recognize that she could use her voice in education as a kid to make a difference. Being curious. She said to the students, you can be curious in asking good questions. She said, when I arrived at this new school, I had to ask questions about how to get involved. So I had to depend on other people around me. I had to depend on my curiosity to ask questions so that I could get the answers. She said, being compassionate, number 2, is important because we have people around us who have different experiences. She said, I have a brother who has special needs, and I had to learn at an early age to be compassionate, to be kind. He taught me patience. If there's anyone in your life who has a disability, they've probably taught you patience as well, because it is not business as usual. Teachers who choose to serve students with disabilities in the school system have had to learn patience, because it is not business as usual. You may ask students to write an essay. You may ask students to work on an assignment, but your student with disabilities needs a little extra time, needs a little extra support, may need some additional accommodations. It's all in the IEP. So Jordan is sharing with her peers the journey of living with an individual who has special needs. Do you know the powerful lesson she taught her middle school peers about disability and inclusion? Her 3rd C was being confident. She said, I had to learn confidence and knowing who I am and what I bring to the table. She said, I want to be a chef one day, and I want to help my brother learn how to navigate the kitchen safely. So she works alongside my husband and I as we are in the kitchen. And now Josiah can make his own grilled cheese sandwich. He can fix his oatmeal in the morning. We are teaching him to build a life of independence, which is our goal for him, for other individuals with disabilities. The pandemic could not put a stop on us meeting those goals. If anything, the pandemic taught us the value of being together all the time due to stay-at-home orders, due to quarantine. The pandemic has been troubling for many people, But can we find moments of gratitude in the midst of the pandemic? I say yes. Yes to more time together with our family. Yes to jumping on Zoom to have family conversations with our family members in Virginia and then in South Carolina, and my 94-year-old grandmother in Charleston area. I have been able to see the value of watching my son in the kitchen versus having a quick moment so that I can get off to work. There's more time together. So Jordan taught her peers, being curious is important, being compassionate is important, being confident is important. But here's the last one, being courageous. It takes courage to navigate this world of disability. It takes courage to speak up when you see injustice taking place. It takes courage to stand up for someone who may not be able to speak up for themselves. It takes courage. And as Jordan said to her middle school peers, she said, it took courage for me to stand before you today as a new girl and give this speech and wanting to become the student council president so that I can help us make a difference as middle schoolers. When she shared her speech with me, I had a moment because I was so proud, not just of who she is as my daughter, but also the vision that she has for her peers. Can I tell you what happened? She gave that speech. Those students voted, and Jordan became the student council president of her middle school of 750 students as the new girl. Let me tell you today, education matters, not just for policymakers and school committee members and mayors and counselors, but education matters for our kids. They are the future, but they are not just our future, they are our present. You can continue being a leader, being a community advocate, being a people helper today as you continue to stay curious, stay compassionate, stay confident, stay courageous. It's our mission, I believe, in coming together for a more inclusive society, for kids like Josiah, who are going to grow up and change the world. There's this little song, I've been a vocalist for many years, and growing up in Virginia, I used to sing at my dad's church and with my siblings. And as a mom, I would carry that singing on and make up little songs for my kids. And one night I told them a story and they said, Mom, you tell us stories, you read stories. Can you tell us a story about ourselves? Can you tell us a story with us in it? And I said, sure, I'll do that. So the next night, I started to tell stories with their names in the story. And I talked about them as kids who would grow up and change the world. And one night I looked at them and I said, once upon a time, there was a boy named Josiah. He grew up to change the world. He's a member of the Robinson family, growing up to change the world. He's a member of the Robinson family, growing up to change the world. And I went through each of my 4 children. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jeremiah. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Jordan. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Joy. And every time I sang to them and I said their name, their face lit up. I'm speaking into their lives I'm letting them know it's not just tomorrow where you'll make a difference. You can make that difference today. So although my journey as a policymaker, as a public school advocate in the city of Boston lasted one term, I realized the powerful impact on families, teachers, but also the impact that it had on my life. It allowed me to realize that this little Black lady who came to Boston to serve her community said yes to a little boy, yes to what his life could become, and yes to making a difference for kids like him. I say to you today, what's your story? What's your journey? How have you grown up to change the world? Because I know that we all have a story to tell, and I know that people need to hear it. People need to know how they too can make a difference. My goal in life is not just to be a great educational leader. My goal in life is to also raise kids who are going to grow up and change the world, whose lives will live on after I'm gone, but hopefully my words, values, vision for education inclusiveness, and for kids like Josiah and their families to gain the confidence to use their voices to impact society for the greater good. I hope and I pray that we can continue this good work together. Thank you so much.
Regina, thank you. Words of inspiration and hope. Thank you very much. And I happen to have in my hand, actually, first I want to direct you to something. I usually don't just put random plugs into the chat, but it just so happens that Regina, your talk inspired me to announce an event that I've just helped organize. I'm part of a committee that's called the Watertown El Salvador Sister City Committee. And we do 8 concerts a year. We host concerts in Watertown as a fundraiser for scholarship kids in our sister community in El Salvador. We haven't done any during pandemic, but we're going to do one Zoom concert, and it's a very well-known performer named Katie Curtis. But the reason I'm talking about this is because she's being, the opener is a 20-year-old girl named Annalise. Annalise's mom is my friend Lori Diamond, who is also our graphic designer, and she's a wonderful musician. So Annalise is a 20-year-old with some special challenges, and during pandemic, she started singing, and her mom and stepdad started backing her up and putting her stuff on YouTube and Facebook. And the first one they put up was called It's a Wonderful World, Louis Armstrong, got 11 million hits. So if you want to hear Annalise and her family band, it's a concert that you can buy a ticket for. It just so happens that there's a secret, which is also free. If you so choose, you can go on the YouTube channel and see it. And you got to see Annalise. She has a voice like you wouldn't believe, and a smile that could light up any plague that came your way. So that show is on March 20th, and I just had to segue from Regina's inspiration to tell you about that, and tell you about my collection basket, which is your inspiration to either go to your checkbook and write a check and stick it in an envelope. The address is in the chat, or else take your little fingers over to the keyboard and go to our website where you can contribute in the form of a credit card or PayPal. That's my little pitch. And my final thanks to Rod MacDonald for being with us today and giving us one last song before we engage Regina in a little bit of conversation before we go on to our fiscal meeting. Rod.
Thanks, Dean. Hey, Regina, you know, when you write your book, you really ought to call it The Answers in the Room. You know, listening to you, this is just kind of off the top of my head because I didn't know what you were going to talk about. But when I started playing the guitar, it was right around the time that the folk music boom was happening, of course. And one of the, if not most important songs of my early teenage years, of course, is Blowin' in the Wind, with the memorable line, "The answer is blowing in the wind." And you have to wonder sometimes, I mean, it was a very important song, and it was an anthem for the civil rights movement, even though it doesn't mention civil rights. And it's a statement about freedom and respect of people and very many important things. But at the end of the day, it also says the answer is out there someplace. And maybe even that you can't really even find it because it's just blowing by in the wind. And I almost wonder if, you know, on some level, it helped sow the seeds for so much of our dysfunctional society. The idea that we really can't find the answer. There's no point even to look. I like your idea better. On some level, it's in the room. And of course, that means it's within us to find it. So, you know, when you write that book, I want to read it. I'm going to sing a song Dean asked me to sing for you folks today. They say you've got to lose before you can win. They say you've got to choose before you can give in. And you've got to cut loose to get back again. And it's a long way back home. They say you've got to fall before you can land. They say you've got to crawl before you can stand. And you've got to lose it all to get what you planned. And it's a long way back home. And it's a long way back home. When you're standing on some place you've never known, and I might see you where the rivers flow, like me, oh, looking for a white buffalo. They say you've got to die before you can live. They say you've got to cry before you can give. You've got to say goodbye before you can come back in. And it's a long way back home. They say you've got to see what you're going to grow. They say you've got to need what you're going to let go, and you've got to believe what you're going to know. And it's a long way back home, and it's a long way back home, when you're standing on some place you've never known, and I might see you where the rivers flow, like me. You're looking for white buffalo. So I say to you farewell, for we will meet again in the hottest flames of hell. I could only call you friend, and when you hear that final bell, do not ask whose round you're in till you found your way back home. It's a long way back home, when you're standing on some place you've never known, and I might see you where the rivers flow, like me. You're looking like me. You're looking, you're just like me. You're looking, for you're just like me. You're looking, yeah, you're just like me. You're looking, you're just like me. You're looking for white buffalo. Well, thanks for listening. Hey, is it okay for me to mention that I'm doing a concert somewhere tonight? Is that okay to just
Of course.
mention this?
Can you give us the link in the chat?
I can. Well, I'll have to go dig it out. It's probably the easiest way to get there is just to go to my website, which is rodmacdonald.com, and it's spelled M-A-C, MacDonald. And also the lyrics to all these songs are there. I think you can just click on lyrics, or you can also kind of go follow the CD links, but the lyrics are all there. The concert is, do you know Joe Jenks, right, Dean?
I do.
Joe is one of the best political singer-songwriters in the labor movement, I think, of today. Younger guy, beautiful singer, and has actually recorded that last song of mine as well. Joe and I are sharing a concert tonight for an organization in Long Island called Sunday Street, and we'll each do a set and then do a bit of a song swap. It's at 7:00. I'll try to find the link and post it, but also you can just get there by Googling it or going to rodmacdonald.com. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And Regina, thank you so much for the inspiration. You know, I have 2 kids, 2 teenagers. I'm an older dad, and I've been watching them struggle with online schooling and everything. And it's very tough. It's a very tough environment, and I feel so so bad for them sometimes that they can't just, school's about so much more than book learning. You know what I mean? It's about hanging with your peers and and sharing your view of the world with your friends and your buddies and your social time, and it's just not there for them. It's a terrible thing, I think. I hope that this situation will change before long, but in the meantime, we have to, as you say, we have to remember that the answer is right here in the room with us. Well, that's my speech, so thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rod. Oh, yeah. And for more where that came from, tonight at 7 p.m., look on Rod's Facebook page or website. We'll get you there. I see Mike Heichman's hand is up. Go ahead and unmute, Mike. Hi, Mike. Welcome.
Hello there. Hello there. Regina, thank you for your beautiful story and your testimony. I've been a voice for the children in Boston for quite some time, and you were talking about part of your story is when you got a call from the mayor. And I just wanted to go a little bit forward in time, because during the time you were on the school committee, unelected school committee, you and Marion were independent voices. And to use the metaphor of the meeting, unfortunately, in an unelected school committee controlled by the mayor, the power is behind the curtain most of the time. It's outside of the room. And you and Marion were independent voices. And as you said, you only serve one term. And it's always been my belief that you only serve one term because you were representing other interests besides the mayor's interests. So one of the things that was amusing one time was when you voted no, and then you said abstain. You abstained, you changed your voice from no, and I think you knew that you were on your way out. So my question is, am I right? Did you leave the school committee because you were an independent voice? And how does the system operate? Because I'm still there. I'm still there. How does the system operate? Are you elected and you were told that you got to be good, or you just know, you just know that you got to play ball with a boss?
Well, those are really good questions. I've always just used my authentic voice, and I've never had any desire or inkling to feel any pressure. I did not know that I was only going to serve one term. I had hoped to serve many terms, quite honestly, because I have young children. Our youngest is 8 years old. And so having met many former school committee members who served for 10, 20 years, I knew that this could be a great opportunity to impact a generation of learners, as is my work in higher education. I believe I'm called to use education as a platform to impact the lives of kids and families. And because I work with adult learners at Cambridge College, I realized that when you educate an adult, you're educating a family and a community, right? And many times I meet parents whose kids were in BPS, and it was such a joy to see that I could have just a small impact on their entire family's life. So no, I did not know that I was only going to serve one term. I was as surprised as the rest of the community when I received a phone call that I wasn't going to be reappointed, and when the Boston Globe, released the names of a new member. I haven't had a conversation with the mayor. I did not have any conversation prior to that decision, so I was completely surprised, very disappointed. I loved the work. I got to tell you, my favorite role on the school committee. It wasn't just kind of sitting in the seat of power and influence. it was when I could visit the schools and I could see the kids at work. Because I have a son with special needs, I'm looking for my people in the schools, right? I want to go to the special education classes. I want to go to the substantially separate classes. I want to see the kids at work. I want to look in the eyes of the teachers and the principals who are serving those marginalized communities. And I want to look at them and say, thank you, well done. Keep up the good work. What else can we do? So that for me was probably the most painful adjustment and transition because I wasn't able to connect with the students in the classroom. And so I'm thankful for my experience. I'm thankful to have been appointed. Honestly, if this were an elected journey, and my sister is in the Tennessee. The state of Tennessee, and she is an elected school board member. So she and I shared this journey together. And she has a different life. She has older children, but with my life with younger children and the fast pace of my work, I don't know if I would have run for that seat at that time in my life. As I said, I think the answer is in the room of elected and appointed. I think leadership does matter. I think communities of leadership matter, not just a sole voice, but communities of leadership matters. And I hope that my one term, did make some difference in some families' life.
Thank you for being that independent voice. That was very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Homer Frank. Homer, unmute yourself and say hello. Nice to see you.
Hi. That was a very moving talk.
Thanks.
And I just want to feel that, I just want to say that I have a personal connection with Regina now. And I just can't say anymore. It's Rob MacDonald made a nice backup to that. It was a nice connection, and I'm grateful to Dean for bringing this all together.
Me too.
So I hear your story. I just am so grateful for you opened your heart to us, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Homer. I had a thought that in Regina's present work is about adult education, Cambridge College, and we have a connection there that is seen in our archives. Community Church used to sponsor a very ambitious series of lectures that might last like 6 weeks, one night a week, and it might be about religions of the world. It might be about the great books. It might be about psychology. And early on, this is in the 40s and 50s, they would host these events and have all kinds of speakers come. This was not on the Sunday platform, but during the week. It was, and they called it adult education, sort of before that notion was even popular. So it's I'm glad to see that you're on that task.
It's a fascinating journey to see in higher education that, higher education has traditionally focused on the traditional aged students. And a college like Cambridge College came about because of folks just like yourself who realized there is more to this journey than just the typical population of students. What about adults whose education has been denied or delayed? What about those families who still want more for their families, want more for their lives? And a group of educators banded together, came together to start Cambridge College. And I'm forever grateful for the journey that I've been on to serve adults. I have students from 20s to 75. And I am spurring them on to college completion, and it is truly a gift.
Well, someday I will have the time to go back to school. And I've been hearing about Boston University's program, which is that you pay $300 and you can audit any class. If you're over age 60 or something, you can audit any class, not for credit or anything, but you're welcome to go and learn. I want to do that. First, I want to find the time. Is there anybody else who would like to say hello to Regina? Oh, go ahead, Rod.
You know, I teach in a big lifelong learning program in Florida, and I have to say, when I started doing it, I did it from the music. I teach a music history course, but the program has an amazing range of arts classes, educational programming, political analysts, authors, and a handful of music things, of which I'm one. I guess what I wanted to say, I think it has 5,500 members. Of course, South Florida is a retirement area, but what I'm mostly getting at is don't overlook the fact that many people don't want to just atrophy, their brains just atrophy. The conception that people move to Florida just to play golf and tennis and watch TV for the rest of their lives is very limited. I have a very active student population who are really very interested in many, many different things. There's a lot of intelligent and energetic activity going on even among people in their 80s in the lifelong learning community. And I would bet that, for example, what you have to say, Regina, about education, continuing education would be very interesting to people all around the country in an older age group.
Absolutely.
All right. Judith, did I see your hand up? Okay. You just need to, there you are.
Yeah. Regina, thank you so very much for that very, very courageous, probably when you first started sharing that story, but it was very powerful. And actually, when I started to want to say something, I forgot that I actually am a product of going back when I was 30 to Simmons, actually, and finishing my degree. And then I remember when Cambridge College started. But my question to you was, I spent the last part of my life teaching in a GED program at North Shore Community College because reading is my background. And so my question is, those were the people that I felt really were the unseen. And I had many, many, many adults who had been completely just dismissed somewhere along the line because they hadn't been taught to read, and they were incredibly intelligent, all of them. And so I'm wondering what's happening. And when you were in Boston, I mean, the reading situation, and I've been retired for 4 or 5 years, but the reading situation seemed to me to always be an unseen thing that was not being addressed. And so I just would be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Judith. Thank you. I know that within the Office of Special Education, I tried to work as close as possible. As a school committee member, you must focus on all students and all of the different departments and all of the needs. And so I needed to make sure I grew in my understanding of all of the departments and the departmental needs. But the Office of Special Education was always on my radar, and going to SPEDPAC advisory council meetings where the parents would come and parents would ask those questions as well, because reading must start at the earliest ages and it must engage all educators. So one of the goals that I saw with the Office of Special Education was this focus on, there was a focus on inclusion. The school that my son attended at the time, Roosevelt School and the Henderson School, were two really great schools that were modeling inclusion. And what we found to be significant was peer engagement and peer support and having the buddy systems, because inclusion just doesn't benefit the student with disability. Inclusion actually benefits everyone. When my son's paraprofessional, who served him from age 3 to when he was 10 years old, until she went back to graduate school, she served our family, she served him. But when I attended her farewell party and I brought, cupcakes to the kids several years ago, guess who cried the most in her farewell party? It was the neurotypical boys. It wasn't my son. It was all of his friends. To see the power of inclusion, to see how the impact of this paraprofessional who was assigned on paper to my son, how she impacted the entire classroom, the classroom of boys. She and I looked at each other, the teacher and I looked at each other, and we're trying to be the adults in the room, but we're ready to fall apart as well, because we heard how the boys shared one story after another of how Ms. Z impacted their lives. And there's something to be said about that connection when it comes to curriculum, when it comes to academic expectations, and when it comes to teacher professional development. There's something to be said about the power of peer engagement and the power of peer support when it comes to learning some of those basic skills, reading, writing, even when it comes to those basic skill development opportunities, for example, for Josiah, for occupational therapy, for physical therapy. I encouraged them to use the buddy system so that it would incentivize other students who already completed their work. Then they were able to join Josiah for his pull-out service. And the student was able to serve as a peer, but also as a buddy, but also as a coach, because they had those skills developed. So I believe that some of the work in reading, the work from the Office of Special Education, there was a great focus on inclusion while I was there, and just how we can make sure that educators can value that importance of inclusion. Because and I see this with Josiah, as I see him read to his siblings, it's very different than when he reads to us. It's also very different than when he reads to his teachers, right? Because the adults have this expectation, so he's on. And kids don't always like to be on when it comes to reading, when it comes to writing, when it comes to speaking up and answering questions. My father, I told you all, my father is a preacher, a pastor, and he went to school on his first day of kindergarten and came home and started stuttering. My 94-year-old grandmother reminded me of that. What happened on that first day of school? And for his 70-some years, he has always struggled with stuttering. But yet he had to learn to read. He still had to learn to write. And my grandmother told me just the other day, as I spoke with her and I told her about this opportunity and another speaking opportunity later this week. And I told her how I love to tell stories of my dad and my kids. And she said, you tell them I had to be patient because your daddy would read and he would stutter his way through those words, but he would force me to sit there until he finished. So there's that self-persistence, but then there's also that patience. So, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have all the kind of the reading statistics and things of that nature. No. I can tell you that inclusion matters, peer support matters, teachers and the adults around the students matter when it comes to developing those key skills. And if they see the value of peer support, it will continue to increase the joy in learning. My husband Jewis says that in almost all of our IEP meetings. He reminds a teacher each year, a new team each year, that we want Josiah to love learning. We don't want him to feel as though he has this burden upon him to keep up with everyone else. And reading for adults or for kids, I believe the same theme reigns true, where you need to still enjoy learning. And if it becomes a burden, instead of that blessing and that gift of words coming to life, then we're not doing the work right. So we need each other. We need peer support, whether we are 8 or whether we are 80. My mother, I'm thankful that you shared your story of returning to school. My mother worked her 5 kids, through school, helping my father get his education. And at the age of 60, she earned her degree.
All right.
And my father was also an adult learner. He tried it out as a traditional student, got kicked out of college twice, wasn't as focused and disciplined as he needed to be. And in his 30s, after having 4 girls, he went back to school and he pursued his bachelor's, his master's, and his doctorate. And then my brother came along, and so 5 kids while he was working on a master's and a doctorate.
That's really, yeah.
No easy task. So I'm a product of adult learners. That's
Yeah.
why
You're doing, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I guess you can say that my DNA is about non-traditional students, from the youngest learners to the oldest learners. And those basic skills are so critical, but I think we're better together. And I think the research does support the peer, the buddy, and the teacher support around group learning.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things, I had an interesting situation because I also taught in my elementary school, and then I taught at North Shore. So I'd sometimes be in 2 places in one day. But I remember looking at my class at North Shore one day, and I thought they were all able to be so vulnerable with each other because they couldn't read, and they all knew that. I had someone the courts had sent to me because he'd gotten in trouble. I had a grandmother. I had the most diverse group of people. I mean, not necessarily diverse color-wise or whatever else, but diverse, experience-wise and whatever. And I looked and I thought, you're all, the grandmother somehow took on the role to help the kid who the courts had sent to me. I mean, people all sort of found this way.
That's right.
To relate. And I thought, this is amazing. If they all saw each other walking down the street, they would have had nothing in common.
That's it.
Nothing in common.
Few moments in education matter, Judith. You're absolutely right. That is
and it was this vulnerability, that enabled them all to be compassionate with each other. And that to me was amazing. And readers, and this is my last thing, but I think the thing about readers that I felt too was that so often people who are really intelligent came across as not being intelligent, which had nothing to do with the intelligence. It simply had to do with reading and not knowing the words. I mean, if you mix up the word attic and addict, and someone's having a conversation about an addict, and you think they're talking about your attic, you're in trouble, and you're not going to come across as sounding particularly intelligent.
That's right.
So that's why my big thing was about reading, because it's not, it has nothing to do with, if you have a reading problem or dyslexia, it has nothing to do with intelligence. It just simply has to do with your wiring.
That's right.
But anyway, thank you so much.
So good.
We got to wrap up because 2 minutes away is a fiscal meeting. And that's not enough time to just share my gratitude to both Rod and to Regina for making this really wonderful morning. Let's do this to our presenters this morning. And let's finish out before we blow out the candle by saying this little affirmation. And we will care for each other as the world around us unravels, and we will tend to the spark of hope that lives within our grieving hearts. And we are here now in this present moment, lifting our voices and our hearts. And we are here now. We have come together. We are tending the spark of hope. May it grow. And with that, we bid you adieu till next Sunday when we have Margaret Kimberly, hosted by Reverend Irene Monroe. It's bound to be a wonderful program, as are a few others that are coming up. I'm very excited about our Sundays. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you so much.
Rod, we hope to see you both very soon. And we declare this meeting